What the hell do you think you're doing here? Bradley Morrison's voice thundered through the sleek glass boardroom. His piercing gaze locked on Tasha Williams, who stood holding a tablet, just steps away from the CEO's desk. The room went silent, the tension hanging in the air like an electric charge. Tasha's heart raced as she met his icy stare, but she refused to flinch. She had heard the whispers, seen the dismissive glances from the other executives as they pretended she wasn't in the room. She wasn't supposed to be here, not with her temporary position, not with her background. But something in her knew, something told her to speak now. "You're about to make a huge mistake," she said, her voice calm but unwavering. Bradley sneered. What could you possibly know? The first few days had been like this, each moment filled with a quiet tension that gnawed at Tasha Williams. As a temporary assistant, she had no place at the executive table, no real reason to be in the room. Yet here she was, surrounded by million-dollar suits and their cold, dismissive glances. She had grown used to it by now. They saw her as just another worker, a temporary blip on their radar, easily ignored. But Tasha wasn't like the others. She didn't mind the whispers or the glances. She had more to offer than they realized. The job was a means to an end, not the end itself. She had been hired to keep the wheels turning in the background, unnoticed, but she knew far more than they gave her credit for. Her background in finance was no accident, and her years of study and practical experience spoke volumes. Yet, none of that mattered in the eyes of the company's upper management. They had already made their judgments, labeling her as just another person in the background. As she walked the halls each day, she could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on her. But Tasha was determined. She wasn't going to stay silent forever. She had come this far for a reason. The meeting had already gone on longer than necessary, the tension in the room thickening with every passing second. Bradley Morrison was irritated, visibly annoyed that Tasha had interrupted yet again. "I don't know who you think you are, but you're just a secretary," he snapped, his words dripping with disdain. The boardroom fell silent, every person frozen in place, waiting for Tasha to shrink back as she had before. But this time, she didn't. Tasha stood her ground, her eyes meeting his with a quiet defiance. The room felt colder, the air thicker with judgment. The whispers started almost immediately, the subtle sounds of disbelief rippling through the crowd like a wave. She could feel their eyes on her, the weight of their superiority pressing down on her, but she refused to break. It was clear now, Bradley wasn't just belittling her. He was trying to break her spirit in front of everyone. He could feel the power shift, and with it came the familiar feeling of humiliation. She wasn't just a temporary assistant to them. She was nothing, just another cog in the machine. Bradley's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're wasting my time, Tasha," he sneered, his patience thin. "If you don't step aside, I'll have you removed." The room shifted uncomfortably, the tension thick enough to suffocate. Tasha could feel the weight of the eyes on her, every single one of them waiting for her to back down, to retreat into the shadow of her position. Her heart pounded in her chest, a constant reminder of the pressure mounting on her shoulders. It wasn't just Bradley now, it was the whole room. Their judgment was palpable, suffocating. She could hear the whispers, the way their voices lowered when they thought she couldn't hear. "She doesn't belong here. She's just a temp. What does she know?" Tasha's fingers tightened around the tablet in her hands, and for a moment, she considered stepping back, letting the storm pass. But then she remembered why she was here. She wasn't here to hide. She wasn't here to be invisible. She had spent too long in the shadows, letting people walk all over her. She was done with that. "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Tasha said, her voice steady, despite the rising tide of panic in her chest. "You're about to make a deal that will ruin everything." Bradley's eyes narrowed, a flash of anger flickering behind his icy stare. The room held its breath. Bradley's hand hovered over the contract, the pen poised just above the paper. The entire room held its breath, waiting for him to sign. But then, something unusual happened. He paused. The air in the room grew heavier, and for a split second, his eyes flickered toward Tasha. Her gaze was unwavering, and in that brief moment, he saw something he hadn't noticed before: confidence, knowledge, and something far beyond the role she'd been given. "Are you sure you want to do that?" Tasha's voice was calm but sharp, cutting through the tension. The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Bradley's fingers tightened around the pen, But he didn't move. His mind raced, and for the first time, doubt crept in. Was she right? Did he really know what he was about to do? Bradley's eyes remained locked on Tasha as she stood there, her stance unwavering. The silence in the room was palpable, a thick layer of tension hanging in the air. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, something he hadn't noticed before. Her voice had the calm authority of someone who wasn't just a secretary, someone who knew exactly what they were talking about. It wasn't just her words, it was the way she spoke them, like she had seen through the very contract he was about to sign, like she was in on something bigger than him. But what was it? He glanced down at the document again, then back at her. Was it possible? Could she really know more than he did? Tasha's eyes remained steady, but there was something in the way she looked at him that hinted at a hidden truth, something she hadn't revealed yet. The brief flicker of her expression, something between understanding and challenge, sent a cold shiver down his spine. "You're not just a secretary, are you?" he muttered under his breath, though his voice was barely audible. Tasha didn't respond immediately, but her gaze deepened, almost as if she was waiting for him to realize what he was dealing with. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. It was as if the walls were closing in on him, and for the first time, Bradley felt the weight of his own ignorance. He had underestimated her, and now, that mistake might cost him more than just a deal. Bradley's mind raced as Tasha's calm demeanor only seemed to heighten his sense of unease. He had to know who she really was. He couldn't shake the feeling that the woman standing before him was more than just a temporary assistant. "Tell me who you really are," he demanded, his voice betraying the first sign of vulnerability. Tasha took a slow breath and then, in one fluid motion, reached into her bag and pulled out a badge, an executive badge, gleaming with the logo of a high-level financial firm. The room fell dead silent as she casually placed it on the table in front of him. "I'm the senior analyst you've been overlooking," she said, her voice now steady and filled with authority. "I've been with the company for 3 years. This is just my cover." The weight of her words hit Bradley harder than anything he had felt in years. The humiliation he had tried to impose on her now turned back on him in a single revelation. His arrogance had clouded his judgment. He had been played, and the power had shifted in an instant. Tasha wasn't just an assistant. She was the one who had been silently pulling the strings all along. Bradley sat frozen, the weight of his own arrogance crushing him as Tasha turned and walked out of the room. The smugness that had once defined him was replaced with the bitter taste of regret. As the door clicked shut behind her, a quiet realization settled in. He had underestimated the very person who could have made or broken his career. The meeting continued, but no one spoke. The damage had been done. Tasha had claimed her victory, and karma had finally caught up with Bradley in the most unexpected way. He had been the one who needed saving, and now he was left with nothing but his own pride to blame.